I forgot to mention in my 20 minutes of excitement over the show I'm about to talk about that it's the Deep Purple's first shows in India, Mumbai, Bombay, why it's called Bombay Calling. Ian is very gracious in his interactions with the crowd, apologizing to them for them taking so long, loving their support. So, but yeah, special shows, and the energy is fantastic. I think partially because Morse is in the band and Blackmore's not, but also they're in India and the audience, the child in time reaction, the audience loves it. So, anyways, that forgot to mention that somehow because I still rant for way too long about this release. But anyways, yeah, on to the actual my discussion of the release. What's up, people? Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, continuing my deep dive into Deep Purple's live catalog. Gonna sport the glasses probably for 2, 3 more videos. The eye's getting better, but when I drop my video Saturday, which is several days from when I'm filming this, I'm not gonna wear the glasses. It'll be for my next Zappa review. I'm just gonna go out there. I think the eye's good enough to stand this light and be shown to the world now. Take care of your eyes, people. But today's Deep Purple album is Bombay Calling. And up until this point, my live albums, I've gone in the order of their release, regardless of whether it was like a contemporary live album or it was like a 90s release, but of a 70s show. I've gone in the order of the release. But recently, the last two that I've done were Steve Morse era albums. And I really, really enjoyed those. And usually when I'm in the mood for purple, I'm going for 70s purple, regardless of who the guitar player is, regardless of who the singer is. I love 70s era purple, and I love any purple that has Blackmore. Blackmore's a god. He's on my Mount Rushmore. And so the more stuff I generally don't dip into, though I generally enjoy it. I think there's some really good stuff there. But I've really enjoyed the last two releases, a 96 show and a 99 show. So I wanted to stay in the Morse era for a while, and I thought I would do this one. It is not an official release, I don't believe, from the Deep Purple sort of machinery, but it is pretty readily available. It's a 95 show from, no, early 95 show, right? The show is from April 22nd, 95, I believe. Yeah, it's like early in April of 95, maybe a dozen and a half, 20 so shows into Morse's career. It finds this band. I think there's a couple things that when you listen to this band, especially if you if you're familiar with sort of the last Blackmore shows, you hear them where they're going in the next couple years with Steve. There's an energy level, this palpable enthusiasm to be playing live music with this Steve Morse guy. At this point, just the fact that he's not Richie Blackmore is probably enough to hey, nobody's going to throw any water at me during the show, or I'm going to turn around and the guitar player is going to be there ready to play his part. The volatility that Blackmore brings, which if you're in the band probably sucks. If you're a fan of his, you love because it comes through his playing. It just comes through everything. That's not there anymore. And you can feel the excitement with the band. The rest of the band is the people who were playing with Blackmore for, decades and were probably tired of him. And so you get that, you kind of see them figuring out what songs are going to work with Morse, what songs aren't. Are we going to give him a solo spot? Where is he going to get a solo spot? There's a lot of tinkering going on, and you can kind of feel that in little ways. But it's just a fun listen, and it's got good energy. And so I just wanted to talk about this because I do think if you're a Steve Morse era fan and you're only familiar with the officially released stuff, this might be one you might want to check out because the sound quality is good. There's a nice sort of, it's not necessarily bass heavy, but there is a nice weight to the bottom end of the sound that I think helps the Steve Morse sound, especially early on, because he has much more of a shredder sound than Blackmore does. Both of them are technically just phenomenal, but what Blackmore is doing with his abilities is different than what Steve does with his abilities. And I think sometimes if Steve is too high in the mix, he clashes with what Deep Purple is as a hard rock just machine. And he's a little buried in the mix at times, though in the solos he's nice and bright. And I think that actually helps. The only cringeworthy thing sound-wise is John Lord has a couple keyboard sounds in here that I'm like, oh no, yeah, let's not revisit that sound again. Just some very thin, brash just, now that we're in the 80s and 90s, we can do these things type choices that I don't think work. A couple song selections couple that are great that they eventually stop playing in a couple years, and then a couple that this is our new sort of like moody spot that they kind of commit to for a while that I'm not a big fan of, but it's a fascinating listen, and I've said that. Let's get on. It's a 2 CD set. One big complaint, pretty much the only complaint I have, is the actual show starts with Fireball. There is a DVD release of this. The Fireball is on the DVD. It's not on the CD. The CD starts with the second song, Maybe I'm a Leo. Maybe I'm a Leo, I don't think is a good opener. I love the song. I want it on here. I'd prefer it with Fireball. But Maybe I'm a Leo is one of those songs that, like, having it be the second song, whether it's on an album or whether it's live, it takes all of that energy of the first song and kind of channels it into a much tighter, robust, stomping groove. But because the band has so much energy from the opening song, in this case Fireball, it propels Maybe I'm a Leo forward in just a little more of a dramatic fashion and just makes the song work better. Regardless of whether we get a Fireball, it's still a fantastic song. It's awesome that they're playing it. Nice, just great heavy groove. Nice little Lord solo. Morse gets a pretty tasty solo. He sounds pretty comfortable. Awesome. And I've said this before. I'm going to say it every time I talk about Maybe I'm a Leo. I believe that almost half of Josh Homme's entire career is owed to some inspiration he must have heard from the song. Deep Purple invented desert rock when they dropped this song way back in the 70s. Next, we get a Black Knight. Nice Black Knight. Morse is very much in the mix. Like, he is already very much a part of this band. He's very present in this song. He's got licks all over the place, very much in the Morse style. We get a relatively kind of restrained closing solo from him. Like, he's already comfortable enough where it doesn't sound like he has to go out there and prove anything. He can just be himself, and it's a really nice solo. We get a nice patient ending jam, but then we also get the sing-along thing, which for some reason, I don't like it with Deep Purple. The sing-along in Black Knight and the sing-along in Smoke on the Water. We can skip both of those. But I like this Black Knight. Great choice. Next is The Battle Rages On. And this is a good example of a lot of like Deep Purple's Morse era songs for me, is I'm not the biggest fan of quote unquote the song, the verse, chorus, the melody of the vocals, that kind of thing. But then you get to the middle jam and you get to the solos and you get to the kind of proggy transition out of the solos back into the song. And like that middle instrumental section is like really, really good. And then for the end of the song, they return to that same vibe and it's really, really, really good. And so like every time I'm listening to this, The Battle Rages On pops up and I'm like, we're just kind of losing that momentum that we had with like 3 70s era songs. But then we get to that middle section. I'm like, all right, these guys can still write. This is a Blackmore song. It's from their previous album. We only have one Morse era song in here. But it is a late era Deep Purple song. But the middle part, fantastic. Morse sounds good. The band sounds good. It sounds like they're having a good time. This is one of those songs where I kind of wish Deep Purple did the Genesis thing. And we're like, yeah, we're not going to do any of the vocals. We're just going to like have some long series of songs and we're just going to drop this middle section into it. And then when we transition out, we'll just go into something else. That would have been beautiful. Get a Battle Rages On. We get a Woman from Tokyo, which is introduced as an Italian song. We get the full Woman from Tokyo. That middle section sounds so just beautifully psychedelic in just the best way possible, like flirting with a little psych energy. I love it. At the end, Ian is just obsessed with this. I get high, just kind of repeats that over and over again as the song goes out. Really nice sort of rock and roll ending where they just find a groove and nobody's really soloing or adding much flavor. We're just going to ride this groove for like, a minute just as a rock ending and it just feels good because everybody's locked in. So we get a nice Woman from Tokyo. And then the only Steve Morse era song from this is we get a Perpendicular Waltz, which is kind of a heavier, bluesy, kind of a grinding rocker. This would be dropped on the first Steve Morse era album. It was unreleased at the time. And really, it has its moments, but I think the best part about this song is sort of the odd little rhythm structure. Like some of it is a waltz. I mean, it is called perpendicular waltz, but then I think there's like it alternates between like a waltz and then a 4/4 and then like this weird 7 section that's like all convoluted and we're kind of jumping all over the map. So it makes it an interesting song to kind of listen to and engage with. Kind of just the rhythm is nicely funky. Uh, it's got some good parts in it. Morse sounds great in here. His playing sounds good. Overall, I do think it's like we're in a new era of Deep Purple songwriting. That's clear, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad introduction to like, all right, a new Morse song or a new Morse era song. Then we get When a Blind Man Cries. Is that what it is? A Blind Man Cries? My writing is so bad. Yeah. Looks like When a Blind Man Chafs, but I know that's not the name of the song. This is sort of their moody set piece in the middle. It's got its moments. Sometimes if the show is really on fire and they drop it at the right time, it works. Other times, this is one I personally can do without. Never been the biggest fan of this. Morse's playing is really nice. It's got that just sort of atmospheric vibe where he's just kind of like setting up a tone and a vibe as we get some really nice slow keyboard action. And then the odd complaint I have about this, where I do think they're trying too hard, it's Perfect Strangers. One of the things I truly loved about Perfect Strangers in the Blackmore era is I think the minute they played that, the minute they dropped that album, that's an instant classic. You're tapping into the Kashmir groove. You're just locking into that groove. You got tasty solos. The vibe is perfect. The rhythm section is amazing. The organ work. Everything about Perfect Strangers is just perfect from the beginning. And a lot of times when they played it live, they just kind of played it pretty straightforward in the Blackmore era. And you would look forward to the solos and the little stuff Lord does at the end. And it was usually pretty locked in and tight. But then it really sounds like they loosened up the groove a little bit here. They're like letting it breathe a little more. Like it seems like Morse is a little more playful with that rhythm than Blackmore was. Well, Blackmore's going to do things differently just to be defiant. There was something about Perfect Stranger where he felt locked into that main theme. And it just feels like the Kashmir churn that drives this song was just a little like undermined a little bit in the spirit of like look at the set list. It's like Perpendicular Waltz, When a Blind Man Comes, and then When a Blind Man Cries, and then they drop Perfect Strangers. Like we need to feed the audience something they know at this point because we just dropped close to 12 minutes of like brand new stuff, right? And so there's a little, I don't know if hubris is the right word, but a little like we know this is a big hit and we can be playful with it. And in doing so, I think they undermine it a little. And for me, this one just doesn't have the same impact as it did earlier, and it would later. I think they figure out their mistakes. Some bad keyboard sounds towards the latter end that Lord quickly abandons. And we do get I want your Gethsemane quote from Ian at the end from Jesus Christ Superstar. Then we get an awesome Pictures of Home. Awesome. Love that they're playing this. I think this eventually moves up closer to the front of the set list in a couple years. More shredding. Glover's bass absolutely sounds fantastic from start to finish in this song. Really good. Really just confident performance of this. And then we get A Child in Time. A bold choice. I mean, to me, this is where Blackmore is just defiantly Blackmore in the best way possible. The entire band is fantastic. Ian gets to scream his hat off. And this one just, I don't know. It sounds good. That little pocket funk jam after the first part of the vocal sounds great. Morse is doing his thing, but it does feel like the Morse solo is role-playing being Blackmore. I don't know. It just doesn't engage with me. There's something about this Child in Time that I'm like, I don't know, man. But then what happens is, at the end of the song, Lord takes his beautiful, pretty little solo, like this sort of classical, like piano type sound. And then Morse takes over and does this really kind of pretty but dramatic, very tasty, kind of just, we're going to give Morse a time to like fool around at the end of this for a while. And then we take that energy and we don't ever stop and we go right into Anya. And other than the fact that the keys sound pretty rough, Anya is fantastic. And one of the things I love about Anya is there is a little there's like two sections of the song. There's like the main sort of over the top keyboard driven section. And then they drop into this Perfect Stranger / Cashmere inspired groove. And it's almost like when they sat down to write this, and this is going back to like the last album with Blackmore, they're like, hey, let's revisit that Perfect Strangers type vibe that we did that tapped into that Cashmere vibe. It's just that locked in groove, because that works. But they're like, but we can't do the whole song that way. So let's like 2 minutes into it, and throughout the song, we'll just drop into this groove and the song will shoot up to a whole other level, which is exactly what it does. And then it doesn't go full Perfect Strangers, but it gives you this tease of Perfect Strangers. But then they get this breakdown in the middle where Morse gets a chance to shine. And this really feels like his Child in Time. To me, it's like he knows he's in Blackmore's shadow in Child in Time. And the fact that this song follows, and it's also this long, epic song, Child in Time, close to 12, this past 8, we got 20 minutes, 2 songs. Like, I really think he's like, this is my chance to sort of differentiate myself. And I think it's beautiful. The beginning of it kind of feels like a Steve Howe sort of breakdown where, like Howe would play these, like have these solo pieces, and he would do like, start off with a clap or Mood for a Day and go into something else that wasn't a Yes song, but you're like, it sounds composed and it would be like a solo piece. There are parts of this that just sound composed. And yes, Anya is from Blackmore era, but Morse is taking this middle section and really just like, this is my version of Child in Time. You give me this space. This is what I'm going to do. And I really think it really, really works. Then we go into a Space Truckin'. Space Truckin' sounds awesome. Really nice break in this. We get another more solo spot in this, though this is actually called guitar solo. And for this, it also feels like he's using loops. Like I think he plays his progression and then he loops it and then he goes and solos over it. This is another one that even feels more compositional than the first one, where like he's either thought out what he's going to do beforehand, or he wrote something out, or he had a plan. But this whole thing just feels like this random left turn, like middle of Space Truckin'. We're just going to go over here and let Morse shine, but it works. I'm usually not a fan of this, but what he's playing, the vibe of what he's playing, the way he starts off sort of like in this, not necessarily classical, but more composed mode before he starts into shredding mode. And this happens before the edit into the next song. It should happen. The edit should happen much earlier, because then he goes and starts playing Lazy. He quotes Lazy, solos, quotes Lazy again. We're clearly going into Lazy. And then when Lazy, the track actually starts, the full band comes in and we are off and jamming. We don't get the Lord intro. We get the Morse intro. And this is just one of my favorite things of the Morse era, is how they deal with Lazy. And this Lazy is just absolutely fantastic. Just they're off, they're soloing, they're jamming. We drop into a drum solo in the middle of this. Not too long of a drum solo, relatively short in the spirit of all things Deep Purple. After that, we get a really nice Speed King. We get that breakdown for the solos in the middle where Morse and Lord are going kind of back and forth. And then Morse and Ian kind of go back and forth when Ian's like yelling, singing stuff. Really nice, just well-played, fun Speed King. And then I think that closes out the main set, because for the encores, I'm pretty sure the encores, maybe I have this wrong. I don't have the DVD, I've just had the CDs. We get a Highway Star, just a super, super solid Highway Star. And the Highway Star, my favorite part of Highway Star is that little section after they play the do-do-do-do, the written part. And there was about 25, 30 seconds when they're transitioning back into the final verse. And it's a little bit chaotic. And the stuff Blackmore plays is usually just emphasizes the chaotic nature. Like he's just going to ignore what everybody else is doing, just shred until we drop right back into that final verse. Morse works this section well. Like Morse understands the challenge. He understands what he has to do. He makes it interesting. He leans into the chaos. Well played, Morse. Every time, every time. And then we get a Smoke on the Water as the final song. Never happy with Smoke on the Water as the final song. I think it works so much better in the middle of a set. I think they approach it differently in the middle of a set. I just think the vibe is different. They know it's not an encore. There's a sing-along on the end, which I never like. They go right into it, which I like. They finish Highway Star, and it's just like, dun, dun, dun. No, like messing around, and that Blackmore, like, I'm going to fool around for 40 seconds so you don't know what's happening, and then drop into it. We all know what's happening, Richie. We know you're going to play Smoke. This, they go right into it, but I just wish they did it at a different point in the set. But it's an interesting, fascinating listen. There's some really good stuff on here. I think Morse, maybe because I'm starting to really come around to him because of the stuff in 96 and 99, and then we're coming to pretty soon be into the new millennium. But I think he works. I think he's not Blackmore. Nobody's Blackmore. But I think in this one, he really is, he's exploring. Every time he goes out there, he's kind of doing something a little bit different. He definitely has a different way of attacking the guitar than Blackmore does. But the band is obviously having a fantastic time. Ian is in just great spirits every time he's introducing a song. The rhythm section is as ridiculous as awesome. Lord is awesome, despite some bad keyboard changes. But yeah, I've talked about this for a long time. It is a really good listen. Maybe not one of the best, because as you see in my rankings, in fact, here are my rankings right there. Yeah, it's way back at the bottom of the list, right? Just because everything else above it is either Blackmore or Bolan, and so those have to be higher. But yeah, it's way down at 13. But I think these are all, everything above that are all really solid, enjoyable, good listens. And I think it's more fun and interesting than mind-blowing, but I don't think it's bad. Maybe it lags during a couple songs towards the middle of the set. But it's a strong listen. And I recommend it. Like, it's weird that I'm dropping it at 13, but I kind of recommend everything else on this list too. So, I mean, Deep Purple's a great band. Deep Purple's a great band, people. Yeah. All right, that's all I got. I'm rambling. Been long since rambling. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know what you think about this if you check it out. And peace. Talk to you later.